Thank you for accessing this video site. I'm Jim Hendricks, and the following scriptural teaching briefly examines Isaiah 53. The status of the servant passage in chapter 53 of Isaiah the prophet is a much debated issue between the Jewish and Christian communities. Does it refer to Israel going into the Babylonian captivity in 586 BC, or does it refer to Jesus and his crucifixion? Does it prophesy of Israel returning from the captivity, or does it refer to Jesus and his resurrection? The passage actually begins in chapter 52 with God's servant being exalted, but then immediately the servant is described as being rejected, brutalized, put to death, but then restored from the trauma of death. In ancient times, Israel saw the passage referring to the Messiah, but later applying it to the Babylonian captivity. Babylon brutalized Israel, captured Jerusalem, and took Judah into captivity. This would be interpreted as a death. 70 years later, Israel returned from that captivity. This return would be seen as a resurrection. The Christian community sees it prophesying of Jesus being brutalized on the cross, put to death, but then 3 days later resurrecting to new life. Which is it? There are about 10 of these servant passages beginning in chapter 41 and continuing through chapter 53. Most of the passages clearly declare the servant to be Israel. However, the passage in chapter 49 is a clear exception. It reads, "And now the Lord says, who formed me from the womb," that is the servant, "to be a servant, to bring Jacob back to him, so that Israel is gathered to him. Indeed, he," that is God, "says, it is too small a thing that you should be my servant to raise up the tribes of Jacob and to restore the preserved ones of Israel. I will also give you as a light to the Gentiles, that you should be my salvation to the ends of the earth." It is obvious Israel is not raised up to save Israel, and it is not Israel that has brought the light of God to the ends of the earth. No, that has been through the faith of Jesus. But now returning to our question about chapter 53, is the servant Israel or the Messiah? Well, it is both. Isaiah 53 certainly can be used to describe Israel being captured by the Babylonian Empire, taken into captivity, but eventually returning from that exile. However, there are several statements in the passage that rules out Israel being the primary fulfillment of the prophecy. We will examine only 2 of these statements. In verse 6 it reads, "All we like sheep have gone astray. We have turned every one to his own way, and the Lord has laid on him," that is the servant, "the iniquity of us all." Throughout the passage, the servant is declared to be innocent. This cannot describe Israel going into captivity. Israel didn't go into captivity because of their innocence, just the opposite. Israel went into the captivity because the nation had broken over into idolatry and immorality. Then in verse 7 it states, "He," that is the servant, "was oppressed, he was afflicted, and he was like a lamb led to the slaughter. He opened not his mouth in resistance." This does not describe Israel's response to Babylon. At the time of the captivity, Jeremiah the prophet pled with Zedekiah the king to surrender to the army of Babylon. Zedekiah and his princes rejected Jeremiah's advice and chose rather to fight. They did not go like a lamb compliantly to the slaughter. No, they chose to put up a fight. Their decision brought on the destruction of the nation. The same scenario was played out again in 700 years later. Jesus taught peace with Rome, not war. His message of peace was rejected, and Israel waged war against Rome. Again, the nation was destroyed and taken into the Roman captivity. There remains a glorious future for Israel, but the above 2 statements in Isaiah 53 alone rules out the passage being fulfilled by Israel going into the captivity. They, along with other statements in the passage, impressively describes Jesus and what happened to him at the cross.